All right, well, welcome to a new lesson on fractions, and today we are adding and subtracting fractions. All right, so let's look at a couple of fractions that we weren't going to add together. And I apologize for my hoarse voice. All right, let's look at if we're adding 3/4 plus 3/4. Well, when you add fractions or subtract fractions, you need to have the denominators be the same. So in the case of these two fractions, or essentially the same fraction we're adding together, we do have the denominators that are the same. So all that we have to do then is basically just add our numerators. So what would it look like is it would look like this: 3 plus 3 over 4. So we could rewrite the fraction that way. And what that ends up equaling is 6/4. Now, we could leave it like that as an improper fraction, or we could actually rename it. How many fourths are in 6? Well, there's 4/4, which equals 1, and we have 2/4 left over. But we also realize that we can actually simplify 2/4 down to 1/2. So it's 1 and 1/2. All three of these things are equal. So let's look at something that the way we look at fractions. Okay, so we look at fractions simply as this: A over C plus B over C is the same thing as A plus B over C. And you notice that the C has to be the same. It cannot be a different number. We don't add fractions with different denominators. The same thing goes when you're subtracting. A over C minus B over C equals A minus B over C. Again, our denominator is the same. So let's look at an example problem. 3/8 plus 1/2. All right, so we can't add fractions with the same denominator. So we actually need to change our denominators so we have common denominators. So we actually have to change 1/2 because we can't change 3/8 into halves. So we actually need to change 1/2 into eighths. Well, how would we change 2 into 8? You will multiply by 4. So if we multiply, let's do 3/8 plus 1/2, and we do times 4 times 4, and we would get 3/8 plus 4/8, and we'd be able to add those together. So 3/8 plus 4/8 equals 7/8. So 3/8 plus 1/2 also equals 7/8. Okay, well, like we said, the same thing is true for subtraction. So what if we had 7/8 minus 3/4? Okay, again, we need to find a common denominator. So 7/8 minus, what kind of a denominator are we going to find? We need to change our fourths into eighths. So we multiply 4 times 2. And we have to multiply 3 times 2 as well. So we would get 7/8 minus, and then 3 times 2 is 6. 4 times 2 is 8. So we end up with 7 minus 6, which equals 1/8. So 7/8 minus 3/4 equals 1/8. Let's look at another example. 1/3 plus 1/6. Okay, I have different denominators, so I need to change 1/3 into 6th so I can have the same denominator. So what do I multiply by? I have to multiply by 2. I have to multiply by 2, and so I get 1/3 times 2 equals 2/6. So I have 2/6 plus 1/6. And I wanted to highlight one thing. Make sure you don't forget that 2 plus 1 over 6 is the same thing as 2/6 plus 1/6. And what do I end up with? I end up with 3/6, and 3/6 can be simplified to 1/2. And to add a little bit more difficulty, we'll do 1/3 plus 1/5. Okay, so now I can't make the thirds into fifths. So I actually have to change both fractions. So let's look at this. So 1/3, I need to change into a fraction that fifths go into. So what would be a common denominator that both 3 and 5 go into? So we need to figure out how to do that. One way to do it would be called the multiplication rule for finding a common denominator. And you just multiply the two denominators together. So we would multiply 1/3 times 5, and you get 5/15. I'm going to change colors. What do we do with the 1/5? Sorry guys, let's make that look like a real 5. Oof, hold on. All right, that's better. So I already multiplied my third times 5 to get 5/15, and now I need to multiply my 1/5 times 3, and that gives me 3/15. So you can see that my denominators are now the same, and I end up with 5/15 plus 3/15 instead of 1/3 plus 1/5. Don't forget, 5 plus 3 over 15 equals 8/15. Do I need to simplify? Nope, I'm pretty good. I'm happy with that. And last, let's look at one more subtraction problem. 1/3 minus 1/4. All right, different denominators. I can use my multiplication rule, which tells me that I can multiply my denominators together to find a common denominator. So 1/3 multiply top and bottom by 4, and I get 4/12. 1/4 multiply top and bottom by 3, and I get 3/12. So I can rewrite this as 4/12 minus 3/12. And don't forget, 4 minus 3 over 12 equals 1/12. Okay? All right. Good luck, and I'll see you at school tomorrow.